Thank you, Mr. Chair. The problem of home affordability seems to be much more of a problem of supply and demand. Builders aren't incentivized to create enough starter homes or entry-level homes for younger generations to begin to build this wealth. I've been part of discussions between home builders in Wisconsin and some of the municipalities where they're on a carousel, continuing to kind of chase the idea of developing and building a new subdivision, and they can't come to agreement because of the cost of the homes. So one effort to reduce regulatory barriers that I'm aware of is Mr. Loudermilk has a portal for Appraisal Licensing Act, which would provide consistent licensing application and renewal procedures and background checks for appraisers. Mr. Harris, what are some of the other regulatory issues on the federal side that could be removed to reduce the cost of housing that you're certainly aware of?
Well, I think if we take a look at the federal side of the regulations, EPA, WOTUS, the Endangered Species Act, all of which add to the front-end costs of even just getting the permit or the development started, right? We talk about the $93,000 per house. It's really hard to build affordability or affordable properties, or what we like to call attainable properties, those that people can actually own on their own and start building family wealth, the kind that will stabilize families, stabilize neighborhoods, stabilize employee and volunteer bases. So we really think that if we take a hard look at those processes that add to the front end cost, which usually means that you have got specialists and consultants, all of which you're paying for every meeting in which you meet with the city or the county about. So I think those are a good start.
Very good, thank you. Let me kind of shift gears here. Last week, the Biden-Harris administration announced a policy proposal that would prohibit landlords with 50 or more units from taking depreciation deductions if they raise the rent by more than 5% per year. Rent control policies have a poor track record of maintaining house affordability. Mr. Schlomer, can you speak to the negative effects of such a policy, and what are those effects, and what would be the negative effects on housing supply problem that we're facing right now?
Thank you, Congressman. I'd be happy to address that. As I mentioned in my earlier remarks, there is a plethora of research that's been done on the impact of rent controls, on the detrimental impact that it has on new housing supply. I think a great current case study occurs in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. St. Paul adopted rent control a couple of years ago. Minneapolis did not. The construction of new apartment and new rental housing in St. Paul has ground to a virtual halt, while it has continued to grow in Minneapolis and the suburban areas that do not have rent control. Supply does have a huge impact. Why would that be a concern if to hold something to a 5% level? From January of 2022 through June of 2023, the cost for my company to develop a new apartment community, a new apartment home, increased by 42%. Rent did not increase anywhere near that number, even during a rapidly growing rent period of time. So for us to then create new housing in a market that will be under rent control tells us that we may not be able to keep up with our costs, and we have to find markets where that's not a restriction on our development. And that has been proven time and time again. It ends up impacting the quality of housing. People don't maintain housing because of the costs that they will incur relative to the rent increases that are out there. They're very tied together. And so the solution, as we've said before, is to create more housing, and I think we all agree with that. The question is, will regulation, will further burdens to cost, and yes, the representative is correct that much of that occurs at the local level and the state level, but there are incentives that the federal government can offer to prevent further regulation and to try and take some of that back, to increase density of housing, those kind of things, to allow more supply to be created.
Thank you very much for your answer.